The score for James Bond is 88. No, that's not a random stat. It's the Metacritic rating for 007, First Light, and after putting 20 hours into this game, it deserves every single point. But here is what the number will not tell you. This is not Hitman in a tuxedo, and it is not an Uncharted clone either. IO Interactive has built something far stranger and far more interesting than either of those labels suggest. Let us talk about what this game actually is, and whether it earns your $70. The Bond they built. Let us start with the thing everyone was nervous about. A young Bond, 26 years old, Patrick Gibson, an Irish actor stepping into the most British of roles. And I am going to say something I did not expect to say going in. Gibson is phenomenal. Not just good, not just serviceable. He delivers a Bond who is cocky and reckless and still becoming the man we know. And he sells it with the kind of conviction that makes you forget you are watching a video game performance at all. That is how magnetic he is. The game opens with Bond as a Royal Navy airman, crash landed on an Icelandic beach after his aircraft is shot down. He disobeys direct orders to rescue surviving crewmates, and that act of insubordination catches the attention of M, who is quietly rebuilding the 00 program after a disastrous mole hunt shut it down years earlier. What follows is Bond's ascent to 00 status, a globe-trotting hunt for a rogue former agent that takes you from a palatial European estate to a pirate-run black market in Mauritania. The story has genuine ambition, and when it works, it works. The mentor-student relationship between Bond and John Greenway, played by Lenny James, is the best thing in the game. It is sharp, it is warm, and it gives the whole journey a human center that Bond stories often lack. But the villains are thin. Lenny Kravitz as Bauma is magnetic, yes, but underused. A morally gray character who never quite gets the screen time he deserves. And the main Bond girl? Barely a character. More of a puzzle box for Bond to solve. These are problems that Bond films have had for decades. First Light inherits them faithfully. How it actually plays. Here is where things get genuinely interesting. If you came to First Light expecting Hitman's clockwork sandboxes, you will be disappointed. This is not that game. IO Interactive made a deliberate choice to go linear. Art director Rasmus Poulsen put it bluntly. Bond is a hero and has to be a hero. Agent 47 is an agent of chaos. Bond is not. So what you get instead is a 4-mode rhythm that cycles through every mission. Sneaking, brawling, shooting, and something Eurogamer aptly dubbed spycraft. Eavesdropping, social stealth, bluffing your way past guards. The bluff mechanic is particularly delicious. Press circle, and Bond will improvise some spectacular lie that stuns a guard just long enough for you to slip past. It is the most Bond thing in the game. The combat surprised me. This is IO Interactive's first real brawling system, and it is excellent. Think Sleeping Dogs rather than Arkham. Messy, chaotic, physics-driven. You grab bottles off tables and smash them into faces. You wrestle enemies into server racks. The animation work is stunning, a near seamless blend of kinematics and physics that makes every fight feel like a choreographed disaster. The shooting is competent, the stealth is solid, the driving is the part everyone agrees is weak. It is functional. It gets you from A to B, but you will not remember it. And the pacing, this is the game's most divisive feature. Missions open with slow information gathering sections that can drag, then they explode into action, then they slow down again. It is less a roller coaster with one big drop and more a series of smaller climbs and smaller drops. Some critics found this rhythm frustrating. I found it deliberate, measured. It gives the spectacle room to breathe. The technical picture. Now we need to talk about performance, because this is where the conversation gets complicated, and it depends entirely on what hardware you are playing on. On a base PlayStation 5 in performance mode, 007 First Light renders internally at around 720p. That is not a typo. 720p. Digital Foundry confirmed it. AMD's FSR 3.1.5 upscaling lifts that to your display, but the image is soft. Shadows are downgraded. Foliage gets pixelated. There is noticeable flickering during camera pans. It is not unplayable. Far from it, but it is visibly compromised. On PlayStation 5 Pro, the picture changes entirely. Sony's PSSR upscaler takes an internal resolution of roughly 1000p and produces a clean, sharp 60 frames per second image. The difference is dramatic, and on a capable PC, you can push things further still, and with path tracing planned for a post-launch update. Here's the frustrating part: the game can look genuinely beautiful. IO Interactive's upgraded Glacier engine delivers software ray trace global illumination, revised volumetrics, and some of the best character rendering in the business. When the lighting hits right, in a Mauritanian marketplace at dusk, in the glittering ballroom of a European estate, the game looks like a film, but on base PlayStation 5, the image quality undermines that work. Also worth noting, the Switch 2 version is delayed to late summer. IO Interactive's CEO has promised it is running and will ship, but the team clearly needs more time to optimize. The Bond experience and personal verdict. I finished the campaign in just under 20 hours, and when the credits rolled, I sat there for a moment, not quite sure what to make of what I had just played. Here is my honest take. 007 First Light is not IO Interactive's best game. Eurogamer said it plainly, and they were right. The Hitman trilogy is more innovative, more replayable, more mechanically pure, but First Light might be IO Interactive's most important game, and certainly its best written one. What you are buying here is a James Bond movie that you play. It is 20 hours of impeccably produced spy fantasy with Lana Del Rey crooning over the opening titles and Aston Martin's tearing through countryside chases. It is a game that understands Bond not as a set of mechanics, but as a feeling. The confidence, the charm, the barely controlled chaos. Is it too safe? Yes. The Kotaku review nailed this. The game tries to be all things to all people and spreads itself too thin. The tone wobbles between gritty Craig-era drama and Roger Moore absurdity. The toolkit unlocks too slowly. And for a game from the studio that made Hitman, the linearity will frustrate anyone expecting true player agency. But when First Light works, in that Mauritania level, in the breathless plane sequence, in the quiet moments between Bond and Greenway, it is genuinely thrilling. It is the best James Bond game in 30 years. That is not hyperbole. That is the critical consensus, and I agree. You made it to the end. True Rat Pack. Drop a like, subscribe, and tell us, what should we cover next? Later.